Hello. Hello,
Hey,
how are
how's it
you?
going? Good, how are you?
So just before we get started, I just want to let you guys know that we do record our consultations. It's on the form and everything. So if you want to rewatch it, or maybe someone new wants to watch it, you can always force them. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
All right. So I saw Great Dane, correct?
Yes.
So just go ahead and fill me in with any important information that you think I should know about. As you go along, I'll be taking notes, and then we'll go from there. Okay.
All right, cool. So yeah, we have she's roughly 9 months. 9 months? Yeah, she'll be 9 months, I believe, by the time we're looking to board her. A Great Dane female. She hasn't been spayed. I guess that's her physically. She's
Sure.
95-ish pounds right now. So she's a big girl, but medically, or I guess in terms of health, the only one issue that she kind of has is she kind of has like stomach issues. So she's on a veterinarian prescribed diet, which is basically the only real thing that is kind of, I guess, important, is that she does need that prescription diet, which we have on hand. Behavioral wise, she is good. She doesn't really have any temperament. She's good with children. She's good with adults. She does, just because we do have 2 other small dogs, or my family does. So since she is very big, she her size compared to them is quite different. And she's very energetic when it comes to other dogs. So we try to we try to keep them together, or try to keep them together, but the other 2 are kind of old and grumpy and don't really want to interact. So she doesn't really have a lot of interaction with other dogs. But whenever we take her out on walks, she does try to, I guess, socialize with other dogs. So she, in terms of like behavior, she's not aggressive or anything. What else? Yeah, she's very lazy at times. But then again, she gets her spurts of energy.
Sure.
So it all varies.
Sure. What's her name?
Bailey.
Bailey.
Yes.
And then what are your goals with her, like for the future, for training wise? Like, do you guys go like hiking every other weekend, or is it just like a regular normal walk around the block, or like, what are your goals there?
Yeah, we usually just try to walk her in the area, since the area that we live in is kind of quiet, and it's kind of helped, because when we do take her on walks, we've noticed that she gets very skittish, and she gets a little bit overwhelmed when there's too much going on. So we try to avoid busy streets or playgrounds, because she does get very overly stimulated.
Starts to pull a lot. When we pass by a playground, she starts to pull. She just wants to get out of there.
Yeah. But then she kind of contradicts herself, because she does try to pull and get away from the area. But if like kids go up to her, then she'll be okay with them, gradually, of course. In terms of training, though, we we had started I believe it was like a 6-week
Training.
puppy training course for PetSmart. And we went to the first 2, which were basic, like not commands, but basic obedience. And then second one was kind of like leash pulling. And then we got COVID. I got COVID 1 week, so we couldn't go. And then she got it the next week. So it kind of all fell apart. So we haven't been able to like formally train her, if you can say that. But we do want her to not be like completely, I mean, I would love to be her to be completely off leash trained, but I'm not sure, you know, if that would have to be more down the road and kind of get like a consultation for that.
Yeah, and then we try to train her like outside to look at us and do basic commands outside of the house, but she's not very like food driven, and we've even tried toys, and it doesn't really, it's like she's not a big reward for her. Yeah.
Okay. And you guys mentioned boarding and stuff like that. So you're interested in more like the board and train program, or you just want to board her?
I think for the time being, just to board her, but possibly training
as well. Yeah.
Okay. And then okay. And then you guys just set up the consultation to find out more about training, correct?
Both boarding and training, I guess. Like I said, for now, or this next coming month, we're going to be out of state. So we do need, we need to have her, or we need to board her. But we were considering maybe training later down once we're back and everything's kind of settled down.
Okay. So if you're just planning on boarding her, right, you don't need to do a consultation, right? The consultation is only for, you know, if you're interested in training, and we'll talk about that as well anyways. Before, let's say, it would have to be the other way around, right? You cannot board your dog unless you had your dog trained with us, or you've completed the 3-day evaluation and have been like a continued client. So like, I think they do like at least one daycare a week. I think that's the requirement in order to board, right? So those are requirements there. Obviously, if you do the board and train first, since you're already a training client, you can board whenever you want, right?
Okay.
That's how that works there. So just giving you a heads up in case you didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. That's. We didn't realize that.
Yes. So the consultations are only set up for clients who are interested in like training, right? As far as training goes, you know, we only do e-collar training, especially since he's already an adult, right? We'll talk about that as well. But that's just how the consultations and what they're for, right? So the board and train program is something we offer, and it is available, or how do I say, it's more convenient, especially for owners who have busy work lives, or they go out of town or out of state frequently. So sometimes they can't keep up with training. So the board and train would be more of like, we layer in the foundation and it looks good and everything. Now it's just, we did the hard work, because the hardest part about training a dog is training them, teaching them. But then once you've taught the behavior and then you're just practicing it, like that's the easy part, right? So we do all the hard work, the hard parts, and then you just carry that on to help her, you know, with her flightiness, right? Because, you know, as she gets bigger, right? And then, you know, let's say something really spooks her. We've heard a lot of horror stories where collars break, owners get dragged on the ground, just a bunch of stories happen, right? So it's best to get, you know, these things addressed as soon as possible, just so it's not a constant habit, right? Because again, you can do your best to be in those quiet areas, but when you're gonna be walking next to a car and then boom, it's gonna backfire and just start or something, right? You're gonna get spooked, right? So it's more for those scenarios you want to be prepared for and kind of help her realize that, hey, you know, these playgrounds, these areas here aren't scary, and definitely don't want to run away from it, right? So it's something you can manage, right? But you can't get rid of it, right? If any trainer tells you that we can make your dog not nervous, not anxious, not aggressive, they're lying to you, right? You can never take that out of a dog. All you can do is learn how to manage it and make your life like function, right, with this huge, Great Dane you got, right? So that's what would be like our goals for training, is just giving you tools and knowledge to make sure that everything is functioning with your lifestyle, right? I'm not going to teach you all these off leash stuff if you're like, we don't even go hiking, we're not going to use this, then there's no point of teaching you, right? We would help you with walks and kind of having more control with her, right? Or even more controlled play style with other dogs, right? So that's what so far sounds like, your goals would be if you were trying to address these behaviors, as soon as possible before, she gets bigger or stronger, or maybe even
Yeah.
more intense with the flightiness behavior, right? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you bought her from a breeder, or you rescued her, or how did that go?
We bought her from a breeder. Yeah.
I see. Okay. And then when did you start to notice her kind of being skittish outside?
Right off the bat, pretty much. We got her when she was 3 months old, and then we slowly started incorporating like walk, because the breeder lives kind of like in the country, or like middle of nowhere. So I don't think there was any leashes or anything really involved, just because he had so much property. So once we got home, we started incorporating walks here and there. That's when we kind of started that. Everything was kind of triggering her or making her kind of feel that way or react that way. So.
Okay. Would you say her reactions or her behavior out in loud environments is the same, worse, or better than obviously when she was a puppy?
Than a puppy.
I don't know.
I'd say maybe a little bit better. Yeah, it all depends on what's being approached or what we're approaching.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is a personal preference part, but I always like to let the breeders know that, hey, the puppy that you produced has a little bit of lack of confidence in busy environments, right? Because this is an important thing for a breeder to know, because if they know there's like a fault in the litter or something, they have to, a breeder's job is to obviously produce the best puppies, they can, right? So if they know that there's like a fault or there's something wrong with it, because I would imagine, like nothing happened to this puppy, right? Genetics, right? So sometimes, when people rescue a dog and they see the dog like anxious, right? They're thinking, oh, this dog was probably abused, or this dog was probably so and so, right? That's never true, right? The dog could just be anxious from genetics, right? Jesse had a client whose dog got shot by BB guns, like all over the stomach, right? And this dog was the happy-go-lucky, wiggly dog ever, right? Because the dog's not thinking, damn, I got shot a bunch of times, last week, right? The dogs think present, like what's going on now, right? So it's most like just a genetic thing, and it doesn't mean owners did anything wrong, the breeder did anything wrong. It's just how the puppy was born. Same thing with humans, right? Humans have anxiety, humans can get nervous, right? Some are more nervous or anxious than others, right? Some medication to kind of help kind of go through life and stuff like that, right? Where others learn how to manage it, or it's just not that strong enough for it to like be a bother in life or a distraction, right? So it's the same thing in humans, so just kind of like explaining a little bit about that anxiety stuff and how it's just, most likely just from like genetics, just that's how she was bred, right? Any questions about that? Cool.
No, I think we're cool.
Okay. So with the consultation and everything, I'll still speak about, how our training programs work, what we offer, and how, we introduce these tools to Bailey and everything, are you guys familiar with an e-collar, or have you heard of it, or?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Well, we just from like YouTube videos that we've seen, dog training. We kind of have an idea of what they are,
Okay.
or how they're using.
Sweet. Okay. when it comes to the e-collar like technology part of it, a lot of people assume it's like more like a shock or like a surprise to the dogs. We like to compare it to like a mini TENS unit. Are you familiar with a TENS unit?
Yeah.
Just a muscle contractor. It's used in physical therapy from chiropractors. We've actually had a physical therapist as a client before, and they actually said it's like it feels like the exact same, right? So that's where the technology comes from. So whatever those two contact points on the collar are touching is what it'll be contracting. So the dog isn't feeling it like flow through the whole body. It's whatever it's touching, right? So if I put on my hand, if I get to a certain level, eventually my thumb will make like a big jump like that, right? Also, it's you've probably seen this commercial where it's like they say like grow a 6-pack overnight, and like this little pad, like that's it's the same thing, right?
Okay.
So that's where the technology comes from. There's again just like an idea that you're electrocuting your dog. Yes, it is electric, but it's not like electricity flowing through the dog's body again. Okay. There are many brands out there. The brand that our go-to is Dogtra. Dogtra has been Jesse's go-to for more than half his career, and he's tried all the brands before, right? And this one gets some of the best results from the dogs, right? The Dogtra brand has 127 levels of stimulation. Okay. You might see that there are other brands out there that maybe have 8 levels, right? Don't think that we have 100 more levels of stim. Their maximum 8 and our maximum 127 are equal and the same. Okay, but Dogtra has so many more breaks between it, and we can be very specific to the dog's personality, the breed, So with an 8 level e-collar, only 8 levels, that's a big jumps. As you can imagine, let's say 5, Bailey's yelping is too much power, but then 4, she doesn't feel it. And now you're stuck, right? Versus Dogtra, if 30 is too high, 20 is too low, 25, 24, we can be very specific to Bailey, right? That's an important part of the e-collar is that everything should be smooth, never trying to overwhelm the dog or anything like that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The brand Dogtra, it's also waterproof. You get a mile to a half-mile long range. You don't need batteries. You just plug them to the wall. They charged. Currently for Bailey, what do you guys use to walk her?
Prong collar primarily. I mean, she has her collar, but we pretty much need her prong collar.
Okay. Do you know what kind of brand it is? Where you bought it?
I can grab it if you want.
And then when did you introduce her to the prong collar?
Probably
6 months-ish, maybe?
I would say a couple months after we got her, or a few months, I should say.
How did she take to it at first, and how she doing with it?
At first, she was kind of iffy about it, just because it was something that she hadn't experienced before. But now she sees the prong collar and she's ready. Like she already knows that it's her time. Yeah, it's the Springer.
Yep, that's a good brand.
Yeah.
Nice, cool. Yeah, so prong collar is a good training tool. We don't offer programs based on prong collars just because it's a very low ceiling rate of success. So for example, what I mean by that is I'll have consultations, and clients will tell me, yeah, we did a prong collar, and for the first week it was great, but then the dog didn't care about it, or prong collar is not working because the dog is just too tough or too gone in like reactivity or flight mode or whatever it is, right? More specific, like bully breeds and like more like happy-go-lucky dogs, since they're so wiggly, like especially like labs, they're a tough dog and they're so wiggly that if you're trying to use like some sort of correction tool on them, they're just like, what's going on? Because you're just still like wiggling, like what? They don't care. you can still teach heel, stay, sit, down, come, place with prong collar, but you don't get that off leash recall. And that's what we find is very important, because once you take that leash off, you've lost all control, right? So our goal here is always to have some sort of off leash recall. Even if you don't plan on taking her off leash, it's more of like emergencies. So let's say you use your prong collar and let's say you thought maybe like the prongs fall apart or the leash break or something just happens. You would want to make sure you have some sort of backup tool, right? Like a secondary tool to make sure that you can still recall her in case she, is in flight mode, right? Because when a dog's in flight mode and you're calling their name, they're not gonna listen. They're just gonna keep going, because flight mode means kill or be killed, run for your life. Okay. And you need to make yourself more important than, her thinking survival mode. And that's very difficult if you have nothing to touch her, right, from a distance if she's running away. But prong collar is a good tool. It's a physical tool, right? It offers physicality to the dogs. Dogs are physical animals, right? So if you go to the dog park or you just watch any YouTube video of, dog fights or dog communication, very mouthy, very, if a dog's trying to set a boundary, it's not going to be, obviously they can't use language or anything like that. They can't say leave it, off, or no. Dogs also don't drug each other, neuter, spay, or time out each other, right? It's, you're going to do this, or you're going to behave this way. You're going to get consequence, and that could be a bite, could be a big bite, could be a growl, could be a bark, it could be something, but it's going to be some sort of physical thing to the dog, right? There's a really popular YouTube out there. It's like a Korean retriever, I think. She's entering, you might have seen it. She's entering her little playpen, and she's got like 8 puppies, and they see mom. They're all coming to mom. They're whining, and then they're jumping on her. She literally freezes up and just snaps at 3 puppies, and they all turn around and lay down, and it's quiet, right? Because the mother, even from that little young age, the mother is already disciplining, correcting, and being physical with her puppies, right? So whenever we hear you can't correct a puppy, or you can't tell a puppy no, whatever, the puppy's been getting corrected before you bought the puppy, right? The puppy's already experiencing these this type of like ideas, right? So that's where the prong collar comes from, and the e-collar as well. They're both physical tools, and they come from the mother biting their puppies, right? That's where like those prongs are shaped like that, and everything, how it's contracted, right? It's their language, right? And when you're teaching a dog in their language, they're obviously going to learn faster because they understand the communication there, right? Any questions about that? Does it make sense?
No, that makes sense.
Sometimes with prong collar, it's a very confrontational tool, and sometimes dealing with a flighty dog or a dog who's nervous and we're using prong collar, it can sometimes send mixed messages to the dog. So for example, the dogs know when you pull on the prong collar that it's coming from you because the leash is attached, right? Versus e-collar, dogs don't know you're using the e-collar, okay, because there's nothing physically attached to you in the feeling. So the goal for e-collar training is always to make the dog believe that they are the ones making their own decisions, no one forcing them to, right? Because when they go through that idea or the psychology behind the tool, that's where you start to see confidence build, because they're thinking, I did this, we made it through, no big deal, we're okay, right? So prong collar can be a little difficult because now she's seeing you doing it, and then she's like, well, I'm scared, but you're like forcing, it's like a more confrontational for her. And confrontation in any type of sort of training can be sometimes dangerous for dogs, depending on what the dog is and how you're kind of being confronted, right? Any questions so far about that?
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
So how we would introduce the e-collar to Bailey. The first exercise we always teach our dogs is the heel command. Heel is just the walking command, right? Our version of heel means walk with me, stay with me, and sit when I stop. So if I take 5 steps, Bailey takes 5 steps. If I take 10, she takes 10. Then when I come to a stop, she's to automatically sit with no words, with her shoulder parallel to my leg, loose leash in any environment. I don't care how many kids are running around or how many playgrounds are around, right? That's how strict the heel needs to be, okay? So there's many reasons why this is our first exercise, our first go-to, right? The obvious reason would be for the obedience, right? We get a good walk, perfect, right? The other goal is, again, to teach her how the e-collar works, right? So a lot of times people think e-collar training is when, you know, the dog does a bad behavior and then you slam them with like a high amount of pressure, right? So for example, reactivity, my dog is barking, correction, high correction, right? There first needs to be some sort of idea of what the e-collar is for the dog before you start to create even more confusion, right? Because if a dog is in a state where they've never felt the e-collar and you correct them very highly, they're wondering, where did it come from? When is it going to come back? What was that? All these questions are going to be going through their head, right? So we always do, you know, behavior stuff later, introduce the e-collar first, and then we dive into more advanced stuff, whatever that may be, right? So again, we're teaching her how the pressure of the e-collar turns on, and then how the pressure turns off as well, okay? Letting her know and making her think that these decisions and choices are hers, right? When we're dealing with, you know, a lack of, you know, a confidence in the environment and everything, the goal here would be to at least just get her to not run away, right? So that we're able to make our way through these environments, right? Because you can't make her like, you know, playgrounds and stuff like that if she's never tried it, right? Once she tries it, she still, that liking of it is still a maybe, because it's the same thing with humans, right? I can always say, like, I've never had sushi, but I see it and I don't like it, right? But I've never tried it. I can try it because I'm a human, I can make that decision, but I can also choose not to like it at the same time,
Sure.
right? But at least I gave it an attempt, right? So that's the same thing here, is that she hasn't even tried it. So, you know, once we kind of make a break through that, where if we're dealing with a dog who, right now we have a client, I have a client who's same way, but not with loud environments. It's just being outside. Like, she doesn't even want to go out for a walk, right? So when it was a very, very difficult thing. But you know, once we made a half block, right, the dog's like, oh, this isn't that bad actually, right? And we keep going, and we find new things that are a struggle with her because it's the first time. And then maybe we go under a bridge, and that was difficult. Now we got to work through this, and then she finally goes under the bridge. She's like, oh, I'm okay, right? We're good, right? So that's kind of like the idea here, and the goal here is to let her know that, hey, you know, if we walk through here, you might not like it, but maybe like maybe you have to for some reason, and you just, at least she's not going to run away. You might see her stressed, she's like, I don't like this place, I don't like it, but at least she's going through it, right? Because stress is a you know, something we're just going to have to deal with throughout life. Same thing with the humans, right? If I was a kid and Friday I had to give a speech, right, there was no way to avoid it, right? I couldn't tell my mom, please don't send me to school. And she's like, no, you're going to go through it, right? It's just part of life, right? Because it's preparing you for adulthood and all these other things, you know, the bills, jobs, you know, all these other things, right? So it's the same thing here, is that one day you're going to have to go through something, and at least she'll know how to handle it instead of running or dragging you away. And then it's just like a whole like thing going on outside, right? So it's just learning and teaching her how to handle these stressful moments, just so she's able to like understand, and maybe she will like it. Maybe she's like, oh, this loud environment is filled with children, and I love children. Oh, it's not that bad actually, right? And that's all maybes, right? The most we can do is at least just get her to walk through and you know, remain calm, stay in the heel, and just push through and then go through it, right?
Sure.
So we would obviously be telling you, you know, if we go through the training, we would obviously telling you, go to these loud environments, keep going, repeat. Because if you only go to these loud environments once a month, it's going to take a long time to make progress. Versus if you live right around the corner of, like, for example, Oz Park, easy progress, because you have the busiest park in the city right next to you, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. One last thing about the heel. Another thing we're trying to create is having her be more focused on you. So the idea is that heel is so important that these other things happening around me doesn't matter because this is more important, right? Because e-collar again is a physical real tool. It's touching her versus the kid screaming over there is nothing that is not affecting her physically, right? So the idea is again that she's more worried about the real physical tool and not the, you know, I like to say like the ghost over there, because the ghost can't touch you or do anything. They're scary looking but can't affect you, right? So that's another thing. So again, for obedience, understanding how the e-collar works, and then again to help her be more focused with you so that you're able to go through these environments and just overall more control, especially as since you have a Great Dane and stuff like that, you know. What else? Any questions?
So you would say that the e-collar, well, because like I know like how she mentioned that she isn't food driven or reward driven, that would help then with that or that problem.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get a dog, let's say they're so stressed outside because they're worried about what's happening here. Or like just like about an overstimulated dog as well, right? Overstimulated dog or reactive dog, that they're so stuck on something, right? That they're unable to realize that there's food right here. So once you start to address like that problem, since they're more relaxed and like more like, okay, I don't need to worry about this anymore. What's going on here? You present the food, they might be more open to taking it because now we've kind of relaxed the brain a little bit more. Sometimes dogs just don't take food outside, and that's fine. It's not needed. We kind of work our way around it if we need to, but there's always many options before we just like completely just ditch it, right? So there's some dogs have been helped with, you know, with the e-collar and then able to take food as well outside and stuff like that.
Cool.
And what else? So that's how it's taught and everything. As far as programs go, you know, if you're still interested in the board and train, there's 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, and 4 week. Elias is our board and train teacher, so he teaches the board and train dogs, and everything is videotaped for you. Okay, so you're gonna see, there's a video for every week. You know, she's here. So if you do a 2 week, you get 2 1-hour-long videos. The first video is going to be like the introductory sessions of heel, stay, sit down, come, place, and you're seeing how does Bailey react for the first time to the e-collar. Let's say we see Bailey get a little flighty because now maybe she's like, oh, this is a new tool, I don't like this, and you'll see how Elias handles that. We probably might not even see it because since you guys already did, you know, some work with a prong collar, that there are very similar feelings, you know, of the way how pressure is. So usually with dogs who have undergone already previous training or prong collar training, e-collar is really smooth because it's just kind of like they realize it's the same thing. So Elias will be heading those videos, and then also with the board and train, you get follow-up lessons. For the 2 week board and train, you get 4 hours, and then up and up and up. The more obviously weeks she's here, you get more hours. This is just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, right? And everything is being practiced consistently once you bring her home and you're kind of like already aware of how to use a tool. So you're getting video, you're getting footage, and you're also getting that in-person lesson. While she's here, just because she's a board and trained dog doesn't mean she's not going to get to play with other dogs. So she'll still be able to play, socialize. And again, throughout the day, she's getting training sessions by all the handlers, right? So Elias is the teacher. Once he's taught a behavior, everyone who knows how to use the e-collar just kind of reinforces and practice the repetitions, because those are definitely needed throughout a dog for them to like learn the behavior. Repeat. If she's not getting trained, and if she's not playing, she could be doing treadmill work. I don't know if you can see There's tremels behind me, so she'll learn how to walk on a tremel. We've had a few Great Danes go on the longer one here, and they have no issues as well. If she's not doing any tremel work, she can be doing duration work. So on the back, you see like this bed, there's like beds around here. So we'll put dogs on these beds, and then you can't see it, but there's playpens in front of me. And the dogs just have to learn how to do nothing, right? Relax in this bed. There's to be dogs walking around you, dogs doing tremors activity right throughout the day, and they have to learn to kind of observe and just lay on their bed and remain calm, right? So it's a good like a mental exercise for them. If she's not getting trained, playing, duration work, treadmill, she might be getting a training walk outside, or she might just be resting in her kennel, right? So the regular boarding or daycare dog definitely gets a lot, just normal play and treadmill and then resting, right? That's how we run our facility. It's an hour activity. So she's a board and trained. She's going to be getting a lot more activity during her stay because of the training. Okay. Any questions about the boarding stuff while she's here?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So again, if you wanted to proceed with just regular boarding, taking a look at the website, see what the requirements are. If you want to do the board and train, which a lot of clients do, they'll do the board and train because they know board but also need training at the same time. They'll just do that, knock out, two birds, one stone, right? So then they can just board and again in the future whenever we need it. But other than that, the only thing is that just letting you know as well that we do have other training programs like in person and daycare and train. Board and train isn't the only option we have. So in person is more like, I meet with you guys once a week, either here at the facility or Oz Park. And it's a lot of slower process, but some clients favor the in-person programs because they are a part of the whole thing and they're seeing everything happen, and then they're more involved with it, getting hands-on, stuff like that. And we always push for in-person, right? We always recommend that you guys do the work, right? Because at the end of the day, me, Elias, Jesse, we already know what we're doing and we can make these things happen fast, but it's you guys who are going to be walking her through these busy parks. It's you guys walking her and living life with Bailey, right? So that's just another thing to think about as well, is you can do the boarding and evaluation and all that stuff, and then maybe when it comes to training, you're actually like, I actually would rather be a part of it and be there for the in-person stuff. So that's also available for you as well, or daycare and training is there too. Daycare and training is very similar to board and training. Obviously there's just no boarding, same thing, same concept and all that stuff there. Did you want me to go more in detail of the in-person program, or are you guys pretty set with that information on its own?
I think we're set for now.
Okay. Other than that, one common question we get about e-collar training is, does a dog graduate from it? Do I do the program and then do I need the e-collar? Is it on all day, or how does that work, right? The e-collar is only on when you need it. Okay, so for walks, we always recommend our clients, you should have it on your walks because we can't predict what's going to happen on this walk. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's best to be ready. So it's not so much of you constantly using it, it's just having it when you need it. So for example, like my dog Lola, she's been getting e-collar training since she's been like 5 months or 4 months-ish, maybe around there. So this day I mostly walk her off leash around the parks and stuff like that, and the heel and everything. So I definitely have it on. But if I put a leash on her and I have the e-collar on, I maybe tap like, I don't know, once a month, 2 times a month at most when we're doing heel stuff and outdoor stuff. But I still keep it on just to make sure, because she still hasn't experienced a car backfiring right next to her. She hasn't experienced a firework getting shot right close by. So for these reasons, I keep it on just to make sure that if something were to happen, I have control right? So it's more of like a backup, and if anything, at that time, in the future down the line, in the home, if she's fine, then you don't need it. Maybe someone's coming over and they're afraid of dogs, and sometimes they can get really like close to their guests. Then you can call her up and address whatever that needs to be addressed, whether that be just her giving space, or maybe you just tell her to go to her bed and she stays there. Then it makes your guests feel comfortable as well, because now they're thinking, oh wow, like they have control over their dog, right?
Mhm.
So like those reasons in the home, that's where the econ can be useful, right?
Okay.
Again, in short, it's mostly just whenever you need it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So those are the programs. It's kind of a question we get when it comes to like the e-collar stuff here. And she sounds like she's a friendly dog. She loves children. Another common question we get, let's say we have a dog who's happy-go-lucky and wants to say hi to everyone. It's not really like a bad thing, right? He's not hurting anyone, this dog, but it's like the owner might be just like, I just want to go for a walk, and I don't want my dog being, pulling me to every single human we see, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes their concern is, will my dog hate people if we're trying to address his behavior? It doesn't happen, right? We never see a behavior like that, like human aggression or an over-friendly dog create aggression issues with a certain stimuli. The behavior or the behavioral issue has to already be there, right? So the dog already has to dislike humans in case we see it again, right? But if the dog has never had any issues with humans, or like with other dogs, dog reactivity, where the e-collar can't create or make that idea in the dog's mind, right? It also doesn't take personality away, because sometimes dogs are like, he's so happy, he's so wiggly and everything, I don't want to take that away, make him a robot. Our goal is not to make dogs a robot. Our goal is to just add control when needed, right? So the perfect, I guess, goal or idea is, my dog chase squirrels, play with dogs, but when I call them, they come that second and fast, but then they can go play again if I release them, right? So it's more just like, again, just to make everyone happy in life and everything function. Again, I'm not trying to make a robot or anything like that, but just more of like, just more control. Because when you add more control to a dog's life, it gives you more freedom. Technically, I know it sounds funny, more control equals more freedom,
Sure.
Yeah.
but that's what we do here. Any questions about?
No, no, cool. Okay.
All right, so pretty much covered everything there. If you have any questions after this consultation, feel free to email me at enrique@canperspective.com. It's on the email already in the Google Calendar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But after this consultation, you're going to be receiving a follow-up email from our kennel manager. She's gonna send you the programs I recommend with the price and stuff like that. And the ginger software to see the shot records, profiles, and stuff like that, and an agreement thing. So if you decide to proceed with the boarding service, all stuff needs to be filled out in order to begin the billing and booking process. If you don't want to proceed with the boarding train but want to do boarding, you still got to do the ginger stuff. So it's all the same, right? And you should be receiving that follow-up email either tomorrow or the following day, the latest. But it should be tomorrow, and then again, we go by your availability. Right now, we just finished a few boarding trains, so we have open slots and everything, so we can start as soon as possible whenever you guys are ready. But no, if that's all, you guys, I know